But first I will introduce ourselves. So this is the Open Society Hub for Politics of the Anthropocene. And we, from time to time, we have the great minds coming to us and presenting their work and views on the past, present, and future. There are a lot about future that we will learn today. Oxana Timofeeva is a philosopher, born in Siberia, and now teaching in Berlin. Until the Ukrainian war started, or the Russian war in Ukraine started, Oxana was teaching in the European University in St. Petersburg, which used to be the best university in social sciences and humanities in Russia. Oxana migrated from Russia, like thousands of our compatriots. And she's now a member, she's now teaching in the Berlin University of Arts, and also is a senior associate at the Institute of Global Reconstruction or Global Reconstitution, also based in Berlin. And on the top of that, Oxana is a visiting professor of philosophy at the Center for Applied Ecologies of the University of Copenhagen. And what is perhaps even more important for Oxana is that she is a member of the creative and kind of revolutionary collective Chto делать, which was based in Petersburg and now it's probably dispersed all over the world. At least 3 continents. Oxana's books published in many languages include Freud's Beasty Boys, Sex, Violence, and Masculinity, published by Polity Press in 25. Solar Politics, published also by Polity in 2022. How to Love a Homeland. I think it's available mostly only in Russian.
Available in
Many languages.
Yeah.
In many homelands. And also History of Animals, published by Bloomsbury Books in 2018. The History of Animals and Philosophy of Animals was the which then was spread into different directions. But in Russia, frankly, Oxana is known as the leading authority on the philosophy of George Bataille, which she published in Russian with introduction and annotations. Oxana's most recent book is called On the Soul. Please, yes.
Thank you, Alexander, for such a nice introduction and also for inviting me here. Very nice to travel this beautiful city. Beautiful. I do not have slides. As an excuse, I wanted to have to prepare nice slides, but there was no internet connection in the hotel, so I didn't. But I invite you to mobilize your capacity, our basic capacity of imagination. It's very important to have it without actually the external supply, because we have all the imaginary of the topic which I want to discuss today. We have all these images in our heads, I'm sure, in our dreams or in our fantasies and in our fears and anxieties also. It's gonna be a short talk, but I hope, my hope is to have a longer and more deeper, consistent discussion, because actually I will not share some social. It's not a what I perform today is not a piece of social science, but rather human science. So it's not about facts. It's not about the news, but it's rather about the meanings, or like what later what called eternal, about eternity, and yeah. So it's a more like a philosophy. I use more or less a philosophical approach. Not in every audience it sounds familiar, but please feel free if you feel like something is unclear. I'm sure everything will be like totally unclear, but it's a well. Some things must stay not absolutely clear, because there must be a rule. There should be a rule for a development, a movement. Because when everything is fixed and everything is like fully exposed, then there is no change. There is no possibility of movement, thought. So thought needs some empty spaces, something that is not filled by words, by numbers, by facts, and so on. So the title of my lecture goes as lecture. I don't know, talk. Talk reads like, what does the apocalypse reveal? The initial idea was what does revelation reveal? So I meant I wanted to talk about this meaning of the world, apocalypse. Apocalypse. I was a little bit working on this topic since 2014, when the war against Ukraine actually began, but it was not a declared, it was an undeclared war. It was the very beginning of the process which we fully observe today. And I, back at that time, I was thinking about the end of the world. And then I was discussing it in the connection to the concepts of the end of history, but also with regards to a certain general meaning of the apocalypse. Then I somehow not abandoned this research. We can call it research. It's rather like something in between a research and existential experience, because it's like more like an artistic research, but not really artistic, because I work with the sources. So I observe all the rules of academic research. Just my goal is not to really present a research, but to arrive at a certain point where there is no other ground, where the ground is more like shaking, and you do not feel like fully confident, and that's the difference of philosophical approach from like research in social science, for example. You have to lose the ground, not to gain it, but those conflicts, what is going on. So that was a prehistory. Why I came to that topic? I came to that topic because I was also writing on the zombie apocalypse back at that time, simply because I had a dream that once that I was a zombie and I was struggling together with the other zombies against the human beings who were winning. You know, all these zombie apocalypse movies where human beings, they are good, they are like healthy and clean, and zombies are those who got this disgusting virus basically, and we got that virus, so we were on that other side, and we were somewhere with my like zombie comrade. We were in the trenches, and he or she didn't have a hand, and but they had probably legs, and I had hands. So I decided that I have tools, and so I can share with him, like, because I'm decomposing all the way. So I'm decomposing, so I can detach one of my hands and attach it to my comrade body. And that's what is shared pain, which only zombies can have, because they are already beyond this idea of a body as a unity, as a certain entity, which is like one in its oneness and cleanness. It kind of struggles against all the disease and all what doesn't fit to the idea of a beautiful, wonderful humanity. So in that apocalypse, little private, very intimate apocalypse, we were decomposing, but also experiences different kinds of solidarity. But this is not what I wanted to share today. It's just like a prehistory of how I was thinking about this topic in many different directions, and one of those, like with regards to the zombie apocalypse, the result of my thinking was a very short essay, which is called Manifesto for Zombie Communism. And there I quote Lenin and his reflections on the conditions and his definition of the revolutionary situation and the conditions of the possible revolution, what actually should happen for the revolution to be possible. And he named three or four conditions. Once when the ups, the rulers cannot rule as they did before. Then the downs, the oppressed cannot live as they lived before. And then the other one, the readiness of the masses to die in this struggle. And I was thinking about this readiness of the masses to die, and how illegitimate this idea would sound today, because life is taken as something like a sacred value, and this value is shared by all societies, even if these societies do not really follow the certain principles that this value dictates, but nobody would die for just nothing, especially in the situation when there is no hope. And so, but the readiness for the masses designates precisely the situation where there is no hope. Otherwise, why you would die? If you hope for something, then hope is always connected to the future. So I hope that it will be better. Okay, now it's not that good now. It's actually terrible, but in the future it will be better. this is one kind of hope. Then the other kind of hope is that now it's terrible, of course, but there can be even more terrible. So at least now it's somehow tolerable. It's not that terrible as it could be if, and that's how we preserve a certain status quo or the order of things. We rely on our hopes, or maybe more. So hopes, whereas the revolution that happens in hell, in the situation when there is no hope. That's why the zombies. Why the zombies struggle? Not because they want to eat brains, as the stupid Hollywood imaginary tries to present the zombies, but because it's so such an injustice to be a zombie. What is a zombie? After all, the zombies are historically they didn't get the virus. Historically, zombies were the name of the people who were the victims, basically, of the like in the Caribbean, in Haiti. They were the victims of the sorcerers who would use the people as slaves, and in order to make them, for example, not resistance to make them obedient, to make them not feel pain, and so on and so on. They were given poison. They were passing through a social ritual, which was called zombification, and which is still a crime. And in Haiti, for instance, people believe that there are people afraid to become a zombie, to be made a zombie, in order to be like slave forever, the one who is a slave forever. But this is a little bit this is again what not I want to talk about. So back to my why I'm now telling this story, because it's like a kind of I want to give you this sense of hopelessness. So the zombie say I'm dead, but still I'm kind of disagree. So there is no hope, but something. That is the idea of for that soul that kind of cannot accept the situation, its own death, and so it raises up. It's like a rebellion of the dead against the very fact that they are dead, and so it's a moment of subjectivity that is cannot accept things as they are, and the very injustice of death. So I was thinking about death as this injustice and the apocalypse. Moving back to the apocalypse, not a zombie apocalypse, but apocalypse in a more general sense. So in today's culture, we are not, so now zombie apocalypse is not the most popular topic because it is replaced by something else, which comes like more like a, looks like a more real apocalypse. Not that cinematic anymore. And in today's culture, apocalypse is generally imagined as a sort of a planetary catastrophe, or the end of the world. Anyway, the end of the world. But we shouldn't forget about this original meaning of the Greek word apocalypsis, which is revelation or disclosure. Revelation or disclosure. The range of its connotations is quite wide, from uncovering the truth or revealing the secret to a sort of erotic exposure. In my language, in Russian, for instance, it sounds very it sounds clear, like we say, откровение. We can be revelation. So something is revealing also in this intimate sense that I'm telling the truth. Yeah, and the Greek term keeps it as well. So, but the English, you cannot find I could not find an analogous in the English, but the idea is that something hidden is revealed. Things come to light out of the dark, the clouds. The apocalypse is thus the name not only for a vision of a future planetary catastrophe, but for the lifting of the veil of the present and the uncovering of the present, of what already is. The catastrophic aspect of the apocalypse can be traced back to the last book of the New Testament, St. John's Revelation, the book of Revelation. The author of this book, dating approximately from the first century, someone named John, describes something that was revealed to him, shares his prophetic visions. A series of disastrous events preceding the second coming of Jesus Christ on earth. And St. John's claims that the time is at hand. All this will happen shortly. Although all the relevant data are encoded according to an rather opaque biblical numerology, one might suggest that what is revealed in St. John's book is not only the visions of the future, but also the flashbacks of the present, something of which the author was a witness and which he found a way to encrypt in his message. Thus, the number of the beast of the apocalypse, the number of the beasts, there is a certain numerology, right? And this is a numerical version of the Antichrist. Might point to the name of Nero, the emperor of Rome, who, together with Domitian, was known as the very cruel dictator, massacring and persecuting early Christian representatives of members of early Christian communities. They were burned alive. They were thrown to the wild beasts, and so on and so forth. As Engels indicates in his short essay on the Book of Revelation, these communities in that era were, I quote, rather like local sections of the International Working Men's Association. Most likely, John himself was one of the victims of these repressions, mass repressions, and he wrote this book on Patmos Island, to which he was exiled by the Romans for believing in the testimony of Jesus. If we believe that John's apocalypse was already at hand, then he was saying that the time is coming. It's like right now. Well, then doesn't this mean that for now, today, the catastrophe he revealed has already happened? So the world is over, and we are now living in post-apocalypse. It's an interesting question which concerns the temporality of revelation. It has its own temporality, which is more like cyclic. As Alexander Mein, a Russian Orthodox priest, theologian and a biblical scholar, was martyred in 1990, replies to this question in his book dedicated to the book of the Revelation. I quote, "The end of the world is a permanent reality. It constantly repeats." Mein interprets it in a very Christian way. There is a catastrophe and there is a salvation. all turning points in history are apocalyptic. The struggle between good and evil repeats again and again. And the good has a chance to win each time a believer opens his door, the door of his doors of his heart to Jesus, who knocks there. But imagine there is no salvation. Nobody is knocking the doors of our hearts. Nobody is knocking the doors of our hearts. Contemporary discourses on the apocalypse are largely dominated by catastrophism. These include anthropogenic climate change, the extinction of species, you name it, the irrational drive towards a new world war, recent increase in nuclear threat, capitalist technocracy destroying the earth and expanding its extractive models into outer space. And on top of that, an existential catastrophe of life losing its ends. Even if these phenomena are often listed together under the umbrella of public crisis, are discussed outside of religious or theological frameworks, they somehow tend to be absorbed into a sort of prophetic eschatological narratives and presented as the signs of the coming apocalypse, whose horsemen already mounted their horses. The white horse, black, or as we call it, pandemic. The red horse, war. This is what we are living through right now. The black horse, famine, also kind of something actual. And then the pale horse, death, or as we would call it, extinction. The pale horse, you know what is a pale horse? Pale horse is like a gray horse. It's like a grayish. That's how at least artists represent it. Of course, I have this guilty pleasure of looking at different depictions of the revelation, how different artists work with that, and that. And the pale horse is like, but these are not only, this is the St. John's version that the horses are necessarily for. We are not obliged to keep to this number. Actually, why would they be for? Because the horses of the apocalypse they can be multicolored. They come in all colors. I don't know, the brown horse, whatever you name it. Petroleum, green horse, the violet horse, a pink horse, what would be a yellow horse, or a horse that doesn't have any color at all, a non-colored, a horse of no color. But if it is not only the end of the world, but also a revelation, what does it actually reveal? That's the question. This is a philosophical question. So from like a kind of applied point of view, it doesn't make any sense, but somehow it does. I'm not sure I can like prove it, but I'm trying to share the sense of it. Which kind of truth is unveiled? What kind of intimacy exposed through our contemporary horses, today's horses, apocalypse? This is the question. that I address, and the question: what is the revelational sense of the apocalypse, and what is our place within it? It's subjectivities as forms of life, as modes of finite bodily existence. That's what I mean. When I ask, what does the apocalypse reveal? I do not have an answer in mind, but I do have some philosophical insights towards sort of more materialist conception of revelation, not theological. Because what is my problem with theological? Yet philosophers contributed. This term revelation was picked up by Christian theology, and was developed also into philosophy in Western philosophy up to the German idealism, like Schelling or Hegel. Schelling wrote Philosophy of Revelation. But what they or Hegel, for Hegel, what reveals is history. Like God reveals itself in the world. God as immortality, infinity, reveals itself in our finite world as history, as a historical becoming of humanity, development. And in Schelling, alternatively, God also reveals himself in the world as nature. Like nature is revealed. Nature reveals the presence, the necessity, the infinity of divine presence. But this is this is a very positive picture of the revelation, which actually also reveals, but there is a dialectic in the revelation. Revealing is also hiding, like something is hidden. What must be still revealed behind the veil of this theological understanding of revelation is that there is a dark side into it. So this is like revelation is, in this theological sense, a positive one, suggesting that the end of the world reveals the eternal life of God, for instance. Behind these discourses, sublimation. It's sublime. It's a sublimation, but sublimation in psychoanalytical sense, it coincides with repression. Something is repressed. There must be a return of it. Yeah, this is yet another excursus. So my idea was to give another, like, more non-religious, materialist insight into this topic of revelation that brings together both cosmic and existential levels of the ongoing apocalypse. What happens on the cosmic level? So on the cosmic level, let's address philosophy. It concerns the temporal structure, which I already mentioned, of the end of the world, which goes back to the pre-Christian worldviews and does not fit our linear idea of time moving from past to future, like we imagined, like something like progress, so on, progressive line. In the 5th century before Christ, Heraclitus said, "This cosmos, the same for all, was not created by any god or any man, but it always was, is, and will be an ever-living fire, kindling in measures and going out in measures." This is a very radical sentence, because it's a materialist sentence, and the universe was not created by any god. Of course. In Stoic philosophy, the world is also constantly extinguished by fire and born anew, and each new world repeats the previous one. If we think about contemporary physics, we can name scientists like Roger Penrose, for instance, who in his cyclic cosmological model suggests that the Big Bang is actually not the end of this world, but also not the beginning of our world, but the end of a previous one, so that the cosmology is cyclic, and the Big Bang is a repeating event of a kind of a universe that enters into yet another iteration. And these iterations between the Big Bangs are called aeons. Aeons is a word very much loved by philosophers like, I don't know, from Plato to Gilles Deleuze, because it comprises, it combines, it's a very dialectical term, it combines together time and eternity. What is aeon? We say a century, or like in our century, but not in meaning like a century which is not 100 years, but a century, a lifetime, a lifespan. But it can be also a lifetime of the universe, and it can be the whole eternity. Aeon. So Nietzsche's version, going back to philosophers, Nietzsche's version of cosmic cyclicity is called the eternal return. The eternal return of the same. Time repeats itself in an infinite loop, but it is not a dead loop. Every moment of time can be a gate to infinity. Imagine we are staying at these gates. To live, to have a body, means to stay at these gates, to be exposed to this moment, which I understand precisely as the moment of revelation, the gate to infinity. Or the apocalypse, which is not somewhere in the future, not tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but in this sense, it is now, the moment. And it always catches us totally unaware. You cannot get prepared to the apocalypse. You can, if you think you can somehow wait it out somewhere in a secured space, secured bunker, calmly surviving while others perish somewhere else in a climate or nuclear catastrophe, then you are a metaphysical idiot. Why? Because there is no somewhere else. Revelation is not a transcendence, not a transcendence. Transcendence. There is no some other place where all shit happens. Yeah, the metaphysical, that you imagine that you are here and observe something else from like a certain secured perspective where there is no, if you were not a body but just a pure like abstracted gaze. Living, having a body that is, in a Nietzschean sense, staying at the gates of infinity, is a subjective experience. And it differs across the diversity of forms of material existence. Subjectivity appears as the medium of revelation, as an articulation, a joint between the end of the world and, in this cosmological sense, the infinity of the universe, the end of the world and the infinity of the universe. Revelation is this moment of a dialectical moment of passage between the two seemingly opposites. From Heraclitus' ever-living fire to Nietzsche's eternal return, apocalypse thus can be understood as not simply the end of the world, but a sort of a temporal fold where the world remembers itself on the verge of annihilation. I know that now it becomes a little bit unclear, but please don't worry. It's not. Yeah, if you feel like a little bit perplexed or how to say confused, it's okay. It's okay. Although we can, because later in the discussion, we can actually try to make together things more clear. Apocalyptic vision of destruction is also a mode of a truth-telling or the world's most intimate gesture of self-exposure, both cosmic and existential. So now let me come to the existential level. And I want to talk about the spatial force of the apocalypse, the death, not of the individuals, but of entire species. Well, there are many examples, and yeah, just to make this talk a little bit less high floating, I would just mention the recent news from Germany. There is an avian flu that causes the death of like thousands of birds. Migrating cranes, over 2,000 of birds were reported died during the recent basically days, and that's like we read those news and they come as like something normal. Sometimes we do not even notice the death of entire, not only of individuals, but entire species passes unnoticed by us. And today, around 1 million species of animals and plants are on the brink of extinction worldwide. Environmentalists are talking about the 6th mass extinction on the planet. And we tend to think about it in terms of ecology, like extinction, to take extinction as a pure ecological problem. But it is also logical. It is an ontological problem. In terms of ecology, here comes the difference. In terms of ecology, the problem of extinction is that the loss of biodiversity disrupts the balance of ecosystems. Suppose humans wipe out all population of wolves. Without predators, the food chain breaks. The number of deer grows, and they eat all the young trees. Birds that lived in these trees disappear, and so do the beavers that yield dams from those trees. Fish vanish as the rivers become shallow. The landscape becomes impoverished. Forest turns into a desert. Like other animals, humans eventually lose their familiar living space as well. The disappearance of a single species thus causes the collapse of the entire system. But extinction in this sense is a matter of ecological concern only insofar as it affects the survival of humans. In response to the disappearance of other species, we may feel sorry, guilt, or other moral emotions, or may not feel anything at all. Person can be completely indifferent to the fate of wolves, deer, trees, birds, and fish, just as to the fate of the people who happen to live in troubled areas. He has already built his own himself bunker or bought a ticket for the great spaceship of the future, which will bring him to new smart green cities built on Mars or Venus. The point is not that this person is a heartless egoist, but that each of us has a sort of secret little ticket to Mars in our pocket, even if we do not know about it. Ecological awareness and environmental ethics keep us within the practical normativity of common sense and help us to succeed. We learn about the rapid decline of bees and flowering plants in our gardens or in our balcony. That's what we do for the bees. But essentially, this knowledge does not fundamentally transform us, does not shake our entire existence, does not render us speechless. Our hair do not burn because we know that the bees disappear. After all, moral attitude, be it sincere or hypocritical, hypocrisy is like a best friend of sincerity. They always go hand by hand, functions as a sort of psychological defense mechanism, yet another borderline between us and the dying animals. In the ontological sense, the death of a species is the end of the world, or the death of a species is the end of a world, something that we can neither observe or sustain. The world, because ontology is about worlds. The world that dies in extinction is called environment. But what does it mean? In common usage, the German word Umwelt, usually translated into English as environment, is almost synonymous with nature. Like the general sense, we say Umwelt, Umweltschutz, something like this. Now, unlike Welt, the abstract world, the abstract idea of the world as all and everything, the Umwelt is what directly surrounds us, our habitat, or rather, not just ours, because the surrounding world is shared. We breathe the same air as all living beings inhabiting this land or this sky. The question where this land and this sky and some other land or other sky begin is floating in the air, which traverses all borders in the element of winds. This is how ecology understands Umwelt. We share the air, water, and soil with other living beings that inhabit a given territory and whose territories and those territories interconnect. In 1909, Jakob von Extinction proposed to use the term Umwelt in a slightly different sense, to describe the unique perceptual worlds of different animals. Each animal, or rather each species, has its own world. The way these worlds are arranged depends on how the living being interacts with its environment. The forms of sensory perception, sense perception, and its bodily organization. The body makes the soul. That is the subjective experience. Like if I have, I have 4 legs, 2 of them became hands, but if I would have like 8, my world would be different. And my subjective experience would be different, but still it will be a subjective experience. That was Extinction discovered, and that was his idea. that every animal has a world, even the smallest one, and the experience is this, having a world. The smallest animals, which we barely notice, like a tick. Xkul gives an example of a tick. Lacking eyes and ears, this creature still has a subjective experience determined by 3 elements: the smell of mammal skin, the hairs growing on it, and the heat it gives off. These 3 elements may seem insignificant to us, but for the tick, they form an entire world. So it's enough. Not much, but enough. We still have time, right? Okay.
Sometime.
Yeah, sometime. One more reference, then somewhat familiar. View on animal worlds was developed by the contemporary anthropologist Eduardo Viveiros de Castro, who introduces the concept of perspective in the context of his study of Amerindian cosmologies. Perspective, or the capacity to take a point of view, is the way of living, is the way a living being experiences the world. The indigenous people themselves call it a soul, recognizing different animals endowed with souls as persons. Like every animal is a person insofar as it has a soul, it has a perspective, it sees the world. And the way how it sees the world goes in accordance with its bodily organization. Say a jaguar, in jaguar's world, for instance, our blood is a beer or wine, and so on. And the point is not that there is a single world that is seen differently by different kinds of bodily existence, by different animals. But there are actually many worlds. Viveiros de Castro calls these worlds not Umwelt, but natures. There exist many different natures, actually a multiverse, an animal multiverse. The boundaries between these worlds, natures create tension and require a complex diplomacy practiced by shamans trained to intercept another perspective, like to steal another perspective for another animal, and to look into the souls of animals. They should take a certain substance, mushroom, for example. So there are the mediators that help the shaman to go into this dangerous and different diplomacy, communicating to another souls. Because those another souls, they inhabit different bodies. So shifting another idea of a world that is unique, and that is a soul or a perspective. Not a worldview. It's not a worldview. It's not the way how, but it's an entire world as it is. Shifting from ecological to the ontological sense of extinction implies a shift in the hierarchy between what we consider whole, what we consider a part. What is the ecological whole and what is a part? The world accessible to our understanding as a whole is actually more abstract than the part of the part with which we as animals are engaged in a direct sensory relation. Our own Umwelt. The path is we make every day. The bodily relation with our environment. In the ecological sense, the part is important insofar as it belongs to the whole. That is, insofar as the existence of a species is necessary to maintain the balance of an ecosystem, the whole world. In the ontological sense, whole and part are equally valuable. And the existence of any living being is valuable in itself, regardless of its role in preserving the unity of the world in general, of the unity of the world for human survival. I mean, it's not that this vision, like ecological vision of the systemic, like synergetic vision of the unity of the world as a whole is wrong. No, it's true, but it's not the only one. It's not ontological. Ontological is just different. And in ontological, this hierarchy doesn't count between the whole and the parts. So when the last animal of its species dies in solitude, an entire world dies together with it. The entire world, like every animal in this sense, is cosmic. A rare snail disappears. Its fantastical little house world is rolled over the asphalt of our new ecological bicycle path, for instance. What ecological catastrophe reveals is in this sense sort of an ongoing invisible ontological catastrophe. It's fragility, the fragility of life, the fragility of worlds in their essential materiality. And it kind of catches us in this moment of revelation, to which we can never prepare, to which we always remain somehow inadequate. I wonder if there can be inadequate position with regards to it. So this is more or less all what I prepared today for you, and maybe we can discuss it in whatever terms.
Questions, please. Comments. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Oksana, for the whole confusion. I really appreciate. It's been long ago that I haven't heard something provocative and that make the audience kind of feel lost, and that's so healthy, and I appreciate a lot. And I appreciate a lot the resonances that you're trying to put in the table, which for me resonate a lot. For me, makes a lot of sense. I would like to hear maybe a bit more on. Well, first, thank you for bringing Viveros and the perspectivism. I think that's kind of a literature and perspectives and a world and a layer of how environmental issues, and those environmental issues are political issues that concerns the production of the common. And those are ways that are not seen, heard, thought, smelled, perceived commonly in this, let's say, horizons, let's put it that way, on these spaces of the academic world. And I celebrate very much that's where you're trying to take us. I would like to hear a bit on maybe that threshold that is kind of that gate that is between the ends of the worlds, but it's the beginning of others. That sometimes I think is where a certain world view or perspective, the ones that you named, is kind of situated and seen as the end of the world, as something that is happening outside of their hands, involved with it, but it's something that is not touching their body-like existence. I wonder how you see that distance, how that's happening, how that's been built, how is possible that we are being in the middle of the thread, the world is falling in pieces, but we're still standing up in the door thinking that we're not being touched by it. Yeah,
what a difficult question. So basically, it's the question to the whole, which I'm asking myself. Yeah, how it is ever possible. So we are in a certain dialectical situation. Yeah, and here there is a trap. Philosophy produces with this also theology because it is always lurking behind like theological perspective under any philosophical discourse, metaphysical possibilities. There are many possibilities. It suggests you some options, and these options are always sort of like healing or a certain idea for a cosmic design, which would reconcile you to your actual finite trouble, the trouble of finite existence, and you can say that okay, Saint John wrote this book so many centuries ago. And it was already sort of terrible. It was already the end of the world, and now still like species extinct, climate, everything is getting destroyed on our eyes, and we are still here, and we will get through it somehow. There will be a salvation after all. So this hope, salvation persists. So the discourse and the apocalypse per se is both produces anxiety, but is also it is also reconciling us with the reality. It also gives you hope. Yeah. So the idea is how to avoid this trap of like a wonderful reconciliation, which has a certain which goes in like Renaissance humanistic along the Renaissance humanistic lines of the endless infinity of the universes of the worlds, like in Giordano Bruno, who would say, look how great is cosmos. How many, okay, this world will die, but the other one will appear. And the cosmic cyclicity gives you this feeling of relief in face of like the fact that this world is going to hell. And it's because we say this world, but like this world is not these worlds. These worlds. I don't know how to. Well, so there is this moment of a transition between individual existential perspective and the bigger cosmic perspective, and precisely at this moment of transition, when you are neither here nor there. You are here in this, so the question of threshold, how to not to fall to the trap, which is from the both, which is from both sides. It's like always be in the position of in this imbalanced, not stable. Shaking position of questioning your own species being.
Huge discussion. Thank you so much. And I'm listening to you. I was picturing with my imagination, producing images, that individuals just come to life for a very short time span in this eon, billion years of. So obviously, when we try to imagine a catastrophe, an apocalypse, it's always a contrasting narrative of there is a world that is not catastrophic, and then the catastrophe is coming, the threat of the catastrophe. But the reality of our lives is so much mediocre than that, because you arrive in the middle of a continuum, past catastrophes, ongoing catastrophes elsewhere, and still in your little personal world, you need to learn to love your ugly children, unfit friends, all the zombies around you, no? So something like, so you're already in the trenches of zombies and lending your rotten hand to someone else. And so the idea that there will be a cut, there will be a contrast, a revelation in the middle of your mediocre attempt to just staying alive and, try to make something interesting out of this before you die, makes the whole apocalyptic idea of an end very theoretical, I guess, no? And we all tick somehow, no? Living on a mammoth.
Yeah, that is right. I would say there is this the feminist perspective, which is always like, if you compare what actually it's funny that I just noticed that like when people write about the climate or the ecological apocalypse, even male and female authors approach this problem differently. Like, I don't know, the most simple, the most popular mainstream example is Donna Haraway's Staying with the Trouble. What you describe is like, we are staying with the trouble. So we are in a certain catastrophic situation. What we do? We search for like where to get water, how to clean it, how to distribute it among those who survived. So we are not perfect, that the bodies are okay, that we are troubled. Like the nuclear catastrophe, we are thinking, of course, like, well, there will be no nuclear catastrophe, but still we are kind of trying to prepare for that. I think like, okay, we will be, there will be, we should use this and this and that. We must live in a certain different conditions, but still we will try to manage somehow to survive. There will be like a cooperation in this very difficult situation. Whereas like there are peers, thinkers like, I don't know, Timothy Morton would say, the dark climate apocalypse is coming, or what, whomever, like they would say, like this is Eugene Tucker, this is a horror of the alien forces destroying our planet. And then what we can do in front of that is only develop a certain metaphysical like posture of yeah, I don't know, like of something like beautiful that opposes itself, like a certain beautiful soul or the spirit opposes itself to the horrors of our times. More like yeah, the feminist is more like this practical phase, like, you know, during the war. But we see, like, we observe it in the war apocalypse now, how like feminist communities, minor, no center, like totally rhizomatic, doing different invisible things, like, I don't know, fixing things, always fixing something, like doing small kind of like putting things together, I don't know. Yeah, strongly believe in this practical sense of a fast because it teaches us that that when the apocalypse is not somewhere there, but when it's now, you learn to do something, even if there is no hope. There is no hope, but still you do not just take a posture. You somehow action. There is no other options.
I just had a comment on quite specifically that, and that like often when you talk about sort of like, I don't know, in security studies or like around sort of threats, there's often this concept of a loss of social cohesion when a crisis happens. And I come from New Zealand, a country that's very prone to natural disasters. And what you see again and again when the crisis happens, when resources aren't happening, when communities are cut off, every time you don't have this all-out dog-eat-dog world. Everyone like kind of gets together, pooled resources, sits tight, has this very feminist approach to sort of like, well, we're in this situation now. We kind of have to get through it, right? Like when the apocalypse is here, there is still social cohesion. It doesn't become a zombie war. Yeah.
I would like to kind of, well, first of all, thank you so much. I think for me it's really important when we are discussing this topic of the apocalypse to kind of constantly question who is we, this concept of like when we talk in this room about like how the apocalypse affect people differently. I feel like it's very interesting to see the temporal difference, like how people feel their proximity to the apocalypse, especially when it comes to like this contrast that you're creating between ecological and ontological catastrophes, because I feel like it's important to remember that like there are worlds that are already experiencing those apocalypses, right? But then it seems like when the apocalypse is like hitting certain territories, then we care about it. And I think that's like, yeah, like that's very much problematic, but at the same time it creates this sort of difference between how do people position themselves in relationship to the apocalypse in like a temporal sphere, but also in like in a sphere of like the scale of it, you know, like how do people imagine the apocalypse as something that is going to completely destroy their world or as something that they can live with?
Yeah, talking about territories, I would refer to another biblical example. You remember Noah's Ark? The story of Noah's Ark, when God destroys the world because the people behave not in a good way. So he wants to give a chance to people to make it a new tribe, but he destroys it. Must destroy everything. But the species, some species are picked up, like every species are picked up by either by couples or by sevens. What happens then? So Noah builds a ship, an ark, for those who are supposed to survive, the survivors. There are many layers for this story, but one of those layers is very simple. Once I was thinking, so when I began to think about this flood, I was in the US at some conference. There was a huge leftist conference with the panel. There was a panel on ecological catastrophe, ecological panel. People were discussing with the very, like, Marxist, serious man. They were discussing the coming ecological catastrophe. But precisely those days, there was a terrible flood in Slovenia, Bosnia, and like in the Balkans. I think I forgot where exactly, but the entire villages, it was like 7 meters of water covering the houses with roofs. So many animals just died there. There were infections, and that was a terrible flood. I mentioned that the discussion. I said, look, this is a catastrophe thing. Well, but this is a kind of local. This is local. And then I realized that the flood is never local. It's never local. Every flood is like flood. It's because for those who are there, like imagine you are like a horse. You stay there. You were like you live there in this house, and then it's just like there is a flood. This is the end of the world. Your world. It's you cannot. Of course, we always identify. Like when we see the movies, we identify with those who survive, but we, what if we want? We will be there underwater. That's the end. So the apocalypse is always like this kind of war. Every flood is like also local. Every flood is concrete. It's not the whole world, but it's like that. What I was trying to emphasize in this talk, or to stress, or to give you a feeling that although we can speak of practical solutions and practical activities and activism and ecological approaches, but also there is a certain dimension of like absolute irreparability of a loss of life. And this is a moment of extinction that that makes it absolutely intolerable. We cannot reconcile with that. Yeah.
Because I kind of wanted to get to that point about like what makes this moment special, because if we're talking about these ontological worlds that end in extinction, that is the function of survival of the fittest, right? That is how evolution works. It requires the end of these worlds. And I actually think when we're also talking about the subjectivity of that for us, David Attenborough's documentary, A Life on This Planet, which is his sort of autobiography, has a fantastic line at the end where he sort of says, nature will survive this change, we probably won't. And that kind of, I think, really brings that subjectivity into it again, and also has a bit of that reprisal and renewal element. But yeah, if the function of how nature works is this end of ontology, what is it in this current moment that makes it so unbearable? Is it just the scale?
Yeah, that nature will survive is an ecological, it's a right ecological approach. It's objective. So I'm trying to simultaneously to touch on another level, which is like existential and ontological. Ontological existential is about existence. It's about subjective experience, about my own existence, being in the world. So the world that is perceived and that is touched, that smells, that has colors. And from this world, a certain element, when a certain element disappears, there are less and less birds. Nature will survive. Who cares? Nature is an abstract concept. But at some point, we, our grandchildren, will wake up, there will be no birds. No birds. Everything is fine. Like we still drink coffee, but no birds. And there will be fairy tales, there were birds. Nobody will believe, like, okay, like we have dinosaurs, and they were.
There will be drones.
Drones, because they replace. Then drones will extinct, and they get a soul. In order to extinct, you have to get a soul, which means you have to get an actual body to become mortal. And but then I will talk about immortality. Please stop me.
Yes, I mean, I know this will probably go into a whole other direction, but I think it's important to mention also when we're talking about different perspectives, one essential thing, which I know that we're all learned in school in a very basic way, you know, time always goes on, time is a constant, but I think that especially when we're talking about different worldviews and about the worldviews of animals or extinction in itself, we have to take into account that the time frame and the perceived time is different by species or by worldview.
Also, Right. I'm not very competent, so I cannot give examples like because there are animals that live only one day, right?
Mayflies.
They do. Days
Yeah.
a lot. So it's like for a tick, this just to smell the blood and the tick in this laboratory, in Excul's laboratory, there was a tick who spent 18 years in hibernation. There were no food, no nothing. And that tick, it was kind of alive, just doing nothing because there was no stimulus, there was no blood to suck. And somehow he was waiting. He was waiting, or she was waiting. Look, ticks are female, by the way. She was waiting for her moment. Once, I remember it was in St. Petersburg in the year 2020, in June or July, where there were a referendum, so-called referendum. Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted to change the constitution in order to take the right for a lifelong presidency, and so all Russians were supposed to go and vote for this constitutional change. And of course, they were expected, and there was a year of the pandemic, so everybody was expected to go there in a mask. Yeah, there were many stories that Putin himself went to vote for himself for the changes without a mask. And when he was asked why he doesn't wear a mask, he said, "I'm not afraid. I'm sure that the conditions are very secure." So, but wait, people wear masks because in order to not infect the others, not because they are afraid to be infected. But well, this is one moment. But then, of course, the officials of the city were expecting that there will be protest rallies and protests, and they closed our favorite square. We have a square which is called the Mars Field. Mars Field. It's actually very nice square, beloved by the citizens, the inhabitants of the city who used to go there for every protest action. There are beautiful trees, and there are more like trees and kind of bushes and grass. So the square was all closed and surrounded by the police cordons. And the reason for that, the explanation for this closure, according to the local officials, was that there are COVID ticks in this park, in this square. The COVID ticks. So I thought that whom they were afraid of. I thought about this tick. Maybe those COVID ticks, they see there in the bushes. We see there in the bushes. Or we are COVID ticks. That's what they think about the entire population of this city. We are COVID ticks. That is how, and we sit in this on those bushes and we wait. It was kind of that feeling, that the feeling of a little bit of shamanistic imagination. Imagine you get the perspective of a different animal. It's very helpful. It's very helpful, and it's also about empathy and compassion. Compassion means that somebody is infected, or is infection itself, like a COVID tick. but you are also, you share the pain, compassion. You share the same experience of being imperfect, of being finite, of being fragile. And that's how we actually create this path to another experiences. Yes, we do it in our imagination. We communicate with other animals, like we say, we see this bird and say, please don't die, or something. Yeah. And it's like a basic, element of our everyday life, which is so often neglected for the sake of a bigger, more objective perspective. Like, yes, this is another process that demands complex political negotiations. We have different actors. We have business, we have politicians, decision makers, we have academia, we have this and that, we have climate activism. How to balance all these forces for the sake of securing the same status quo? That's the objective perspective, which.
Back to zombies. I have some kind of speculation about that other question. So there is life, there is death, and there are zombies because they are undead. They are neither. And as you mentioned, so the origin of the story came from Haiti, and that were black slaves who kind of misbehaved, and they were punished, and they would be buried overnight underground, and then released. And then after this experience, they survived physically, but they lost any kind of subjectivity. It's like bodies with no subjectivity and no memory. So no memory about like how they were when they were alive. So there is this sort of physical survival is possible, but there is no memory. No transmission of information between these two stages, life and death. While St. John, so he's also like a zombie because he was there, but he returned. That was his revelation that he could talk. He remembered what happened there. Because in this religious Renaissance symbolism, like Luca Signorelli famous frescoes of the second judgment, of the second Strashny Sud, right? So the judgment. So the ashes take shape, and then they become skeletons, and then skeletons become flesh, and then this flesh become so becomes like bodies. But are they, because that's all kind of in fresco, it's like a cartoon, static cartoon. So are they humans? Those who returned from the underneath, are they humans? Do they remember what happened to them there or before? That's actually not clear. But St. John does remember it. So that's basically the main difference between, say, revelation and zombie. This kind of transmission of memory-like information through or across this state conditions.
Memory, yeah, that's an interesting point. Memory is a crucial point, actually, for me. Remember one film, I guess it was Dead Nation or some other quite a good old zombie movie. And there were zombies in America, zombie apocalypse, like there were zombies everywhere already. And it was a kind of comedy. there were two zombies talking to each other, not talking to each other, or a human, still a human, not a zombie, is talking to a zombie. I don't remember the details, but something. And that zombie remembers whom he was in his previous life. I was this or that. So somehow they communicate. So they share the memories. And there was in this very movie, there was an episode with some Christian community. So there is a land inhabited by some like Christian, small Christian sect who praise a zombie because they believe that zombies are the resurrected. So this is a moment of resurrection of the dead. And if we think about St. Augustine's, for instance, meaning of like the fact that he was emphasizing that the death will resurrect in the last days, they will resurrect in flesh. In flesh, like out of ashes, they will precisely raise up like in this cartoon. Then it's getting interesting. So yeah, whereas another reference here is Russian Cosmism, and the Nikolai Fedorov's, you know, Nikolai Fedorov's ideas about the resurrection.
I'm afraid I'm the only one, I think.
Okay, so in the beginning of the 20th century, in Russia, there was a huge spiritual intellectual movement called, well, not huge, but now it's perceived as huge, spiritual movement known as Cosmism. Humanity, like a belief, both Christian and communist believe in the progress of humanity that goes as far as, like in Fedorov's version, resurrecting the dead. Because all negative things must be struggled. And the technical means are already technology. We acquire like already technologies that would allow us to redeem the injustices, the bad things that happened in the past. Death, for example. We will literally resurrect the death, and then the fathers further grow. And then what we do with them? We will send them other planets, because we already, by that time, we already will colonize the whole cosmic space. And then there will be other planets available for the whole humanity, future and past. Yeah. Question is just why? Okay, never mind. So I just the idea that came to my mind, which binds together this cosmic perspective with the topic of resurrection and the zombie apocalypse. But another one was another thinker, philosopher, who was not a cosmist in a strict sense. He was a famous Soviet philosopher, Marxist from the 60s, the 50s, 60s, Evan Telyenkov, who in the end of 50s wrote a wonderful essay. But it's wonderful, but it's also absolutely crazy. Which is called Cosmology of Spirit. And I encourage you to read this essay, where he basically states it's another idea of cosmic cyclicity. He says that all matter is actually matter is thinking. Matter is conscious, but not everywhere and at any moment. But this consciousness develops naturally from the very beginning of matter. It grows, it develops. There is a certain evolution which brings to the appearance of humanity, to the more and more technologies, and so on. Then he describes like the progresses of and the perspectives of communist at that time he was thinking about the communist humanity endlessly advancing its progress into the universe, and the only obstacle to this endless progress was the idea of a cosmic entropy. So after all this matter develops into such a great consciousness, but then the sun dies and the universe cools down and dies as well in the darkness and cold. Because what would you do when the sun dies? Just cold and darkness, whatever. What should be done with that? What happens? Ilyenkov says that there must be an interruption in this process of entropy, an interruption into this natural process. But this interruption is not a transcendent act of divine intervention. This intervention must be performed by the intelligent matter itself. So by a humanity that will at that moment become so advanced that it will be able to counterpoint the process of the entropic cooling down of the universe. So what they would do, these future humans or post-humans, how would you name them? They will create a cosmic fire, so the opposite to cold fire. And this fire will be so strong and big that it will be a world fire that will burn the entire universe, the entire, all galaxies, everything. There must be a huge chain reaction. Humanity, says Ilyenkov, already smart enough that it came to the idea that if we can't cut one atom into two, there will be a huge release of energy, like an atomic explosion.
Nuclear age.
Nuclear age, yes. Nuclear. He didn't know about thermonuclear, which is even bigger. But or maybe he knew, but he didn't consider it here in this text. This doesn't matter. So because it doesn't write on fusion, he writes on fission. Fission, yes. And yes, so it's like a big red dot which humanity must press in order to destroy the world, in order to make it reappear anew. So this is another reference to the cosmic cyclicity, Heraclitus and Stoics, and their cosmic fire that destroys the universe, but at the same time, and Penrose's theory of aeon, like of this Big Bang that constantly repeats. Why did I think about? Okay, that's why. So this is a wonderful picture or terrible picture, I don't know. The picture is insane, but when I read it once and then twice and then many, many times, endless amounts of times, I could not stop because there was something in this essay that, when the life will never be the same. Yeah, that changed my entire existence. I thought, why it bothers me so much? What is my place in it, in this entire cosmic cyclism? I thought of Penrose aeons again, Big Bang, the universe reappear, coming into new iterations, and realized that what if my memory, what is my memory? Memory is like, I can think of it as like a sort of container or as a data storage. But the most, its size is unknown. But most part of it is reserved for the thing that is, or for the things that are forgotten. The core of memory is something that we actually do not remember. It's forgotten. That's why I'm trying to pull it out of my memory. So So it's forgotten, or it's repressed, or it's replaced in a psychoanalytical term, or it's just like what the Greek would call lete. Why I began to think of this story, because you mentioned St. John's experience of coming back from the other side, and I thought about Plato's story, which is called in his book Republic. There is a story of a soldier, old heir, who is coming back from the dead, and he was there like for a guided tour, and he saw how the souls choose their future lives. So I going back to the cosmic cyclicity. I thought, what if the memories of my soul are also like those, especially those who are those that are repressed or forgotten, are also like part of them is like the memories of the universe's previous iterations of the previous eons. The troubled existence that is my own body, female, imperfect, bears the traces of the trauma that happened to the entire universe millions years ago, and that will happen again, and endlessly happens, and so on and so forth, where the beginning coincides with its end. This idea seems to me also quite rich in terms of its metaphysical potential. There are a lot of things to.
Someone should give it to read to Elon Musk. Ilyenkov and Musk, that would be.
Yeah, no, some better not to.
Better not to,
yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Very pedestrian question, but do you think that the cosmism and later Ilyenkov philosophy influence geoengineers?
Maybe the Soviet, why not? The Soviet ones.
The Soviet is, yeah. Yes, you are right. Yeah, I think that the Soviet thinkers more, they were inspired by cosmists, and then through Vernadsky, for instance, then they actually those the founders of the Soviet system ecology were inspired by Vernadsky's work, and Vernadsky was like more is already kind of cosmic thinker.
All this is a little bit autistic, like starting from Fedorov, like how this is autistic, because he was kind of autistic personality, very lonely and booking, and idea of like putting like every effort in resurrecting the fathers, but then not hugging this father, but sending him away. Not living with this father, but sending his fathers to another planet. And the same Ilyenkov committed suicide in the end. Like, yeah, and Musk is so there is this like zombies in this story from Haiti. They could not communicate among themselves. They couldn't communicate with the living. They didn't communicate with the dead, and they didn't communicate among themselves. They were like fully autistic zombies. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the autistic zombies must be overcome for the sake of the solidarity communist zombies.
Good luck.
I don't know.
Okay, if there are no further questions on this or suggestions or projects,
Yeah.
thank you very much.